Imagine waking up one morning checking your inbox and finding a subpoena from a top-tier Hollywood legal firm, demanding access to your emails, private messages, and unpublished videos, all because you dared to talk about a celebrity scandal that's already gone viral. This isn't fiction. This is real life for dozens of content creators who've suddenly found themselves in the crosshairs of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' powerful legal machine. What was their crime? Commenting on a public lawsuit, sharing screenshots from verified news sources, asking questions, offering opinions. In other words, doing exactly what creators are built to do in the age of digital media. But Blake's team wasn't having it. Instead of engaging with the public conversation, they launched a subpoena campaign so aggressive, so invasive that it sent shockwaves through the entire creator community. And Ryan Reynolds, his name started popping up in legal documents too, raising questions about how far the couple was willing to go to control the narrative. This isn't just about gossip anymore. This is about intimidation. It's about power. And it's about what happens when celebrities who built their image on being relatable decide they're too powerful to be questioned. But here's the twist: the creators aren't backing down. They're going public. They're fighting back. And in doing so, they're exposing a side of Hollywood that no one was supposed to see. This is more than a scandal. It's a war for the truth, and you're about to see it unfold in full. In the glitzy world of Hollywood, where reputations are everything and every word uttered in public can be weaponized, a quiet storm has been brewing, one that has now erupted into a full-blown legal and social firestorm. At the center of it, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, two of the most recognizable and until recently most admired celebrity figures in the industry. But as the cameras roll, social media lights up and lawyers begin sending legal threats to influencers and independent content creators, it's clear something much bigger is happening beneath the surface. This is no longer just a celebrity feud or a minor internet spat. This has turned into a significant public spectacle. Allegations of suppression, accusations of manipulation, and claims of coordinated intimidation tactics are all now flying across the internet, with subpoenas as the latest weapon in what critics are calling a chilling legal overreach aimed at silencing free commentary. Let's rewind and break it down. In recent months, content creators from various platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Substack, and independent podcasts have received legal notices, discovery letters, and in some cases outright subpoenas requesting their private messages, unpublished content, and sources. Most of these creators had one thing in common: they were discussing or reporting on the ongoing legal drama between Blake Lively and actor-director Justin Baldoni, particularly around the controversy surrounding the film It Ends With Us and its allegedly toxic behind-the-scenes environment. But this isn't just about what happened on a movie set. This has evolved into a battle about control over narrative, control over public opinion, and most worryingly, control over who gets to speak and who doesn't. Blake Lively's legal team has allegedly cast a wide net, targeting not just whistleblowers or insiders, but everyday creators, people reporting on already public information, offering commentary, or aggregating headlines from established outlets. And that's where things get complicated. One popular YouTuber whose videos analyzing the legal dynamics around Lively and Baldoni often get hundreds of thousands of views shared an emotional video after receiving a legal notice. In it, they detailed how terrifying it was to receive a letter from one of Hollywood's top law firms demanding the removal of content, disclosure of communications, and even a list of their sources. This is intimidation, the creator said plainly. They're not just trying to win a court case. They're trying to scare anyone who dares to talk about it. Across the internet, more creators began coming forward with similar stories, some saying they were advised by lawyers to lawyer up, others choosing to delete content altogether out of fear of being dragged into a costly legal battle they simply couldn't afford. Ryan Reynolds, usually silent on legal matters, was surprisingly named in some of the subpoenas, as his name had been mentioned in speculative content regarding the behind-the-scenes business dealings and PR strategies connected to the controversy. That inclusion raised eyebrows. Was this legal housekeeping, or a deliberate move to tie creators to bigger Hollywood names and make them feel even more vulnerable? Legal experts weighed in, quickly noting that while subpoenas are standard tools in the discovery phase of litigation, targeting commentary or speculative opinion based on public documents can walk a very fine line, especially when the individuals being subpoenaed aren't involved in the case at all. You can't use the law to punish people for having an opinion, said one entertainment law analyst. And you certainly can't weaponize discovery to chill free speech. But this is precisely what many creators are accusing Lively's team of. doing, and here's where it gets even more controversial. Screenshots and emails began circulating on social media allegedly showing private communications between Blake's team and certain publicists or journalists, hinting at a coordinated media strategy to discredit content creators, label them as misinformers, or suggest they're working in tandem with Lively's legal opponents. To many, this felt like a clear PR play, shift the focus from the case itself to those reporting on it. Change the story, control the headlines. One creator posted, "They want us to be scared. They want us to second-guess our uploads, but we won't stop. This is about freedom, and if they can subpoena me, they can subpoena anyone." The backlash was immediate and massive. Hashtag #ISTANWITH creators began trending on social media as fans, fellow creators, and even some journalists rallied behind the targeted individuals. A wave of solidarity content emerged. Some creators doubled down, reposting the same content that had triggered legal notices, daring Blake's team to come after them too. It was no longer just a legal matter, it had become a movement. And in the middle of it all, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds remained largely silent. No formal statement, no press conference, just escalating court filings and what many perceive as behind-the-scenes pressure to control the conversation. And yet silence can often say more than words. One viral tweet summed up the situation perfectly. Blake Lively built a career on being relatable. Now she's trying to sue people for talking about her. The mask is slipping. The image of Blake as the down-to-earth, candid celebrity mom who doesn't take herself too seriously was starting to crack, replaced by a version of her that seemed calculated, controlling, and deeply concerned with perception. In response, several prominent creators began hosting live panels and discussion spaces to unpack what was happening. Legal experts joined these streams, offering context, breaking down how subpoenas work and, most importantly, what creators could do to protect themselves. "Don't panic," said one attorney. "Just because you receive a subpoena doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. But you should absolutely take it seriously and know your rights." And here's where the public started asking hard questions. If these creators were merely aggregating public information and offering fair use commentary, why were they being targeted if the allegations against Lively and Reynolds were unfounded? Why attempt to suppress coverage instead of refuting it openly? And most crucially, why now? Some speculate its timing. The case between Lively and Baldoni appears to be heading toward its most explosive phase. There are whispers of depositions, leaked messages, and perhaps even high-profile witnesses. The last thing Blake's team may want is an army of independent creators poking holes in the narrative or uncovering inconvenient truths before the mainstream media catches on. Others believe this is about precedent. If high-profile celebrities can scare smaller creators into silence through legal intimidation, it sends a powerful message to others: speak out, and you could be next. Either way, it's clear that the legal system and the PR machine behind it is now being used not just to fight a courtroom battle, but to win a war of public perception. Still, the strategy may be backfiring. Creators are louder than ever. Audiences are more curious than ever. And the moment legal muscle was flexed against independent voices, those voices gained legitimacy in the eyes of many viewers. After all, if what they were saying wasn't close to the truth, why try to silence them? As one creator bluntly said, "They're not trying to disprove us, they're trying to delete us." In this battle of Hollywood versus the internet, it's no longer about who has the most fame or the biggest legal team. It's about who controls the narrative and whether or not the public will allow that control to go unchecked. As subpoenas began landing in inboxes across the country, a shift happened. What started as fear, shock, confusion, and even moments of panic quickly turned into something else entirely: resolve. Creators were no longer whispering behind the scenes, they were going public. And they weren't alone. This wasn't just a battle between Hollywood elites and a few internet personalities anymore. It had become a test of how far celebrity influence could reach and how deeply it could be challenged by ordinary people with a platform. The creators, large and small, began banding together, forming informal alliances and support networks. Group chats exploded with legal advice, emotional support, and plans to push back. Some even retained the same legal counsel, pooling resources to respond with a unified legal strategy. One creator who goes by the username Poplet Justice had previously made a viral breakdown video of the Lively Baldoni case. When she was subpoenaed, she immediately went live on YouTube. "This is not the end," she said to her 400,000 subscribers. "This is the beginning of a new chapter where we, the people with cameras and opinions, are not going to be bullied into silence." Her video drew over 1 million views in less than 48 hours. In it, she read through parts of the subpoena, highlighting just how broad and invasive some of the requests were. They want demas, they want drafts, they want everything. For what? Because I talked about a public case using publicly available sources. The absurdity wasn't lost on her audience or other creators. As more content discussing the subpoenas emerged, the theme became clear. This was an intimidation tactic dressed in legal language, and the community wasn't going to back down. Over on X, formerly Twitter, hashtags like hashtag stop silencing voices and hashtag creators v celebs began trending. TikTokers began stitching each other's subpoena stories, turning what could have been isolated moments of fear into a viral wave of defiance. Some of the most surprising support came from outside the entertainment commentary world. Tech creators, political commentators, even beauty influencers, many with no direct connection to the case, began expressing solidarity. Today it's the celebrity legal drama space. Tomorrow it could be a said one influencer with over 1 million followers. No creator is safe if we let this slide. Legal analysts joined the chorus of criticism, with some calling out the vague language of the subpoenas and questioning the ethical strategy behind them. One entertainment lawyer commented during a live stream, "This seems less about winning a case and more about sending a message. But when that message is shut up or else, it can backfire spectacularly," and it did. The moment creators began fighting back with transparency and community support, the story changed. No longer were they just recipients of legal documents. They became protagonists in a growing narrative of digital resistance. Many pointed out the irony. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, once celebrated for being in tune with the internet, were now accused of trying to dismantle it, or at least control the parts of it that threatened their image. Think about that. Blake, who rose to stardom thanks to her approachable brand and quirky social media charm. Ryan, who built a second career on Deadpool-style wit and viral marketing genius. The couple, who turned self-deprecating Instagram posts into relationship goals, were now painted as architects of a smear campaign against people with webcams and microphones. It was a jarring shift in public perception. Even outlets that had previously remained neutral began reporting on the controversy. Headlines like "Blake Lively's subpoena scandal, what creators are saying," and "Ryan Reynolds named in Discovery Docs free speech advocates concerned," began appearing across entertainment news sites and blogs. Suddenly this wasn't just creator drama. It was a national conversation about freedom of expression, celebrity accountability, and the rights of digital commentators to exist without fear of retaliation. But the creators didn't just stop at speaking out, they got organized. Some began working with digital rights organizations. Others launched legal defense funds or partnered with law schools interested in First Amendment issues. What was once a fragmented space filled with individuals suddenly looked more like a movement. A turning point came when one of the targeted creators, a legal analyst known online as JD Unfiltered, released a breakdown of the legal strategy being used in the subpoenas. He explained how overly broad language could be challenged, how prior precedent could offer protection, and most importantly, how coordinated responses were key. Individually they can pick us off, but together we have power. Power to push back legally, publicly, and narratively. His video went viral, sparking creators to host live streams, drop exposes, and even file motions to quash subpoenas en masse. The term "motion to quash," previously confined to law textbooks, started trending on TikTok. And then came the blowback against Blake Lively's own legal team. Critics began naming the firms involved, pointing out their history of aggressive discovery tactics in high-profile cases. One particularly scathing Substack article titled "Legal Overkill: How Blake Lively's Lawyers Declared War on the Internet" was shared over 60,000 times. In a single weekend, it didn't stop there. A leaked court document surfaced showing internal communications between attorneys that seemed to imply they were aware the subpoenas would cause media waves and could be leveraged strategically. While the language wasn't overtly unethical, it was enough to ignite outrage, further cementing the idea that this wasn't a search for truth, but a campaign of control. Celebrities began getting dragged into the mix, not because they were named in the case, but because they voiced opinions. When a well-known actress tweeted, "Maybe don't try to silence creators," just saying, the post went viral with thousands of replies and quote tweets piling on. Some defended Lively and Reynolds, suggesting they had a right to protect their reputations. But that line became harder to maintain as more creators showed that the information they shared was already public, or came from court documents and media coverage. "You can't retroactively erase coverage," said one creator during a legal Q&A stream. "The internet doesn't work that way, and trying to will only make it worse." Which ironically is exactly what happened. The more pressure was applied, the more creators emerged to speak out. Some who had never commented on celebrity gossip began uploading entire series on the Lively Baldoni saga, not because they were invested in the case, but because they were alarmed by the legal overreach. As one analyst said on a podcast, this is the Streisand effect on steroids. If they had ignored the coverage, most of these videos would have faded. But by trying to erase them, they've amplified the controversy 10x. Blake Lively's silence became a talking point of its own. Commentators questioned why she hadn't made a public statement clarifying her position. If her team was issuing subpoenas, why wasn't she addressing the public fallout? Ryan Reynolds also remained noticeably quiet. For a celebrity who had built an empire on quick-witted PR comebacks and self-aware humor, the silence was deafening. This vacuum of leadership only fueled speculation. Without direct clarification from the stars themselves, audiences were left to connect the dots, and the picture being drawn wasn't flattering. Some began comparing this situation to other historical Hollywood silencing attempts, calling back to times when publicists tried to bury stories or studios blacklisted journalists. The difference now: the internet doesn't forget, and creators don't fold easily. By the end of the second week since the subpoenas surfaced, more than a dozen creators had gone public, multiple live streams were hosted daily, hashtags continued trending, and mainstream media began assigning reporters to follow the evolving legal showdown. The creators were no longer just reacting, they were shaping the story. And that's when the questions started being asked: what are Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds so afraid of? If the commentary is baseless, wouldn't it collapse under scrutiny? If the speculation is false, wouldn't transparency clear it up? Instead, the message from the legal filings and behind-the-scenes pressure seemed to say something else: avoid the conversation entirely or else. But it wasn't working. A viral TikTok series called Subpoena Diaries documented day-by-day updates from multiple creators. One of the most popular episodes, with over 2.3 million views, ended with a simple, powerful statement: you can serve papers, but you can't serve silence. The movement had found its rallying cry. By now, what started as a legal maneuver behind closed doors had exploded into a public referendum on celebrity power, the ethics of influence, and how the internet draws its battle lines. What once might have been brushed off as Hollywood noise had become something much more serious, a full-on reckoning with the limits of control in the digital age. And at the heart of it were two of the industry's most carefully cultivated public figures, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. In an era where celebrity is a product sold on Instagram, monetized through branding deals, and protected by carefully curated press, the image is everything. But when that image collides with real-world consequences, especially when legal tactics are viewed as aggressive or unfair, the mask begins to slip. That's exactly what's happening now. For years, Blake and Ryan were seen as Hollywood's golden couple, charming, witty, philanthropic, and deeply relatable. But as the public dug deeper into the subpoena drama, many began to question how much of that image was real and how much of it was the product of expensive PR strategy. Creators, now emboldened and organized, started pointing out patterns. Several showed timelines of events where stories unfavorable to Blake were followed by glossy press appearances, feel-good social media campaigns, or sudden pivots to lighthearted content. Some even dissected her magazine interviews, highlighting how certain talking points were repeated across platforms, indicating coordinated narrative control. While none of that is illegal or even particularly rare in Hollywood, it hit differently. Now, with subpoenas on the table and creators being forced to defend their right to speak, audiences were no longer just consuming content. They were investigating it. One creator called it the PR playbook effect. Another simply said she underestimated how smart the internet is. The backlash wasn't just emotional, it was organized and data-driven. Twitter users began archiving old interviews and press clips, comparing them to the current moment. Reddit threads compiled timelines of coverage, legal filings, and creator responses. TikTokers made infographic videos summarizing the entire situation in under a minute, which helped the issue go even more viral. It wasn't just about Blake anymore. It was about every celebrity who had used charm, press access, and legal muscle to shape the story, while avoiding the harder truths underneath. And then things took another turn. A well-known journalist published a long-form piece titled "The Celebrity Legal Machine: How the Industry Silences Critics One Subpoena at a Time." While Blake and Ryan weren't the only subjects of the article, the piece used their case as the central example, highlighting how their team's recent legal tactics had raised eyebrows across media law circles. The piece included anonymous quotes from inside the industry, including one source who claimed, "There's a belief among some publicists that if you can't kill a story, you should scare the person telling it. This isn't about facts, it's about fear." That quote spread like wildfire. For creators, it confirmed what many had suspected all along. This wasn't a legal cleanup. It was a reputational war. And they were the collateral damage. Viewers, once passive audiences, began choosing sides. The comment sections across YouTube, Instagram, and X began to fill with questions. Why hasn't Blake spoken publicly yet? Is this what they do to every creator they disagree with? How many more people are being silenced? It wasn't just a PR nightmare, it was a trust crisis. A growing number of fans, even those who once adored the couple, expressed disillusionment. The very thing that had made Blake and Ryan relatable, their openness, their playful transparency, was now being weaponized against them in the court of public opinion. A viral YouTube comment with over 20,000 likes read, "Turns out the cool celebrities are just better at hiding the same tactics the rest of Hollywood uses." At the same time, the legal case that sparked this firestorm, the one involving Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, began to regain attention. With the public already skeptical of Lively's subpoena strategy, every development in the original case was now viewed through a new lens. Was Blake trying to suppress evidence? Was Ryan's name being protected because of deeper involvement? Was the whole subpoena blitz just a distraction from what the public might soon learn? No answers came from their team, and that silence continued to haunt them. The creators, however, didn't stay silent. They began releasing sequels to their earlier content, deep dives, expert panels, reaction videos, and even full documentaries breaking down the implications of celebrity suppression tactics. In these uploads, one theme repeated over and over. Again, this is bigger than one case. This is about precedent. One creator put it plainly: if they win this way by silencing us, it means they can do it again. Not just Blake, not just Ryan, anyone, any celebrity, any brand, any billionaire. And that ultimately is what galvanized the broader creator ecosystem. The creator economy thrives on free commentary, the ability to critique, analyze, and discuss public figures and public behavior. If the Lively Reynolds legal strategy was successful in muting that commentary through fear, what message would that send to the next influencer or podcaster who wanted to cover a controversial story? And just as things reached a boiling point, another shoe dropped. Court documents revealed that Blake's legal team had issued not just subpoenas to creators, but also to platforms. Reports indicated that certain YouTube channels, Substack, newsletters, and even TikTok pages had received requests for analytics, back-end data, and in one instance, private subscriber emails. This was the tipping point. Outrage poured in from all corners of the internet. Privacy advocates, legal experts, and creators' rights organizations blasted the move. It wasn't just about targeting individuals anymore, it was about mass surveillance, corporate-enabled suppression. One YouTube legal expert explained, if this is allowed, then they're not just silencing content. They're peeking behind the curtain of the entire creator ecosystem. That's dangerous. In response, several creators filed formal complaints. Some launched public petitions demanding legislative oversight of how subpoenas are used in civil, defamation, and discovery cases involving public figures. It had become a movement. No longer just hashtag IST and with creators. Now it was hashtag digital due process and hashtag rights for creators, hashtags that began trending across platforms and caught the attention of policymakers. One senator even tweeted, "Subpoenas shouldn't be used to chill free speech. This issue deserves a closer look." This escalation triggered renewed interest from mainstream media. Coverage moved from the entertainment section to the front pages. The Washington Post, Variety, and NBC News began publishing breakdowns of the case, each more critical than the last. The headlines painted a stark picture from glam to gag orders inside the Blake Lively subpoena. Scandal: Ryan Reynolds named in suppression controversy, legal or intimidation, creators warn of precedent. As celebrity legal pressure mounts, the public narrative had shifted completely. What had begun as a quiet discovery phase in a civil case had turned into a symbol of everything wrong with unchecked celebrity power. Meanwhile, the affected creators weren't slowing down. Several collaborated on a live-streamed town hall called Subpoenaed But Not Silenced, drawing nearly 200,000 live viewers. They shared their stories, brought on lawyers, and most powerfully read viewer comments from fans who felt similarly silenced in their own lives. It wasn't just about one story anymore. It was about standing up to a system designed to protect the powerful at all costs. In the closing moments of the event, one creator said, "We are not going to disappear. We are not going to stop, and we are not afraid of your lawyers." The internet roared. What began as a quiet legal maneuver by Blake Lively's team has spiraled into a nationwide discussion about censorship, celebrity accountability, and the future of creator rights. In attempting to silence a handful of digital voices, Lively and Reynolds have unintentionally amplified them, exposing the fragile foundation beneath their public personas and triggering a powerful backlash from the very audiences they once charmed. The subpoenas once intended to intimidate have united the creator community in a way few could have predicted. From legal live streams to viral TikToks, from investigative podcasts to expert panels, the internet has fought back with transparency, truth, and resilience. And perhaps most importantly, the public has responded not with silence but with outraged curiosity and solidarity. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds now face more than legal scrutiny. They face a trust crisis that no amount of polished PR can fix. In a world where influence is no longer held exclusively by Hollywood elites, but shared with millions of independent creators, the old rules no longer apply. You can't suppress the conversation when the conversation is the platform. As the legal dust begins to settle, one truth remains clear: the creators are not just surviving, they're winning. They've transformed fear into momentum, intimidation into exposure, and legal pressure into public power. Blake Lively's brand may never recover the authenticity it once sold, and Ryan Reynolds may find that staying silent while creators are attacked by proxy has its own cost. This was never just about one lawsuit. It was about who gets to speak, who gets to be heard, and who gets to control the narrative. In a digital age where truth moves faster than any subpoena, and in that battle, the internet is far from finished.